And now a3 by Carlsen, and this is Mangarini variation. And at the first look, it's looked like an inaccuracy because instead of taking the center, white is going for this weird move. But guys, it's basically used to knock opponents out of preparation because most of the players are well prepared against normal French defense lines. But the moment you play this move, they are already out of their comfort zone. It stops bishop to b5 check and slowly prepares the queenside expansion with b5 in future. So don't think like that this move is random. It's a very sneaky and very practical, especially in blitz and rapid games. And now knight to c6. And after that, b4. And now for black, it's better to just focus on development, like developing this knight or maybe trying to take control over the center, but instead he decides to take on b4. And yes, black is now a pawn up, but because of this, he is now behind in development, and Carlsen took advantage of this by playing the move d4, completely taking control over the center. And now here Carlsen goes for an interesting move, knight to a3. And basically here Carlsen takes advantage of black early queen movement, which creates these weak squares. And you can see now this knight can anytime go for either to c4 or maybe to b5. Okay, so now black goes for bishop to f5, which is really a good move, putting pressure on this active diagonal, which eyes the d3, and now it's not easy for white to develop this bishop. And after that, knight to b5, threatening the move knight to c7 fork. So that's why And finally, you can see Carlsen regained his pawn with a better position, having an active rook on the 7th rank, and now black tries to open the center by playing And guys, that's a slight inaccuracy. Instead of this, for white, it's better to capture the pawn by queen takes d4. And basically, white can win this b7 pawn if black exchanges the queen. I mean, let's suppose if queen takes d4, then simply knight takes d4, and since this bishop is attacked, so it has to move, let's suppose on d7, and finally rook takes b7. And guys, let's suppose after queen takes d4, after this move, if basically black tries to bring this queen back to c6, hoping that now his pawn is defended, but guys, that will be a huge blunder. And guys, now I just want you all to pause the video and try to find the next move which white can play in this position. And if you find the move queen to e5 check, then congratulations, you are a genius. And basically now black has to defend both the check as well as this bishop. And to do this, black has multiple choices, but black has to choose either to move. But the best move for black is to either move this king to d8 or to defend this check with the queen. Because instead of doing this, if black decides to defend this check by, let's suppose, bishop to e6, that will be a huge blunder because of the move bishop to b5, and in the next move black has to lose his queen. Okay, so in the actual game, after knight takes d4, yep, after this move, simply bishop to d7. And after this, knight to b5, a good move by Carlsen, asking for a queen exchange because he knows that this endgame is winning for white. And again, black must focus on to develop his piece, but instead he decides to exchange the queen. And guys, now in this position, black must consider this amazing move, which is to go for bishop to c5, which basically targets both the rook as well as the f2 pawn. And yes, I know you are worried about this move, which is rook takes b7, and now black basically can't capture on c2 because basically he can't move this dark square bishop due to the threat of knight to d6 fork. But to be honest, black doesn't really need to rush this much. I mean, instead of this, he must focus on development like the move knight to f6. And let's suppose if white goes for a check, so that black can't castle. But that will be a huge mistake because after this king goes back, and since this knight is attacked, so it has to move, let's suppose on b5, but now comes knight to e4, and now black is the one who is threatening a fork. So that's why this king now has to move. And note one thing, that white cannot go to either of these squares due to the threat of rook to e8 and then a discovered check by this knight. So that's why king to c2 is forced, and finally knight takes f2 attacking this rook, so rook to g1, and after that knight to g4, and clearly you can see black is now doing great. But after the move king takes d1, yep, let me go back, yep, so after this move here, basically he made a mistake by bishop to c6, and that's a mistake because white can simply go for knight to d4, which is going to attack this bishop. And after this bishop moves, simply white will capture this pawn. But Carlsen doesn't go for that. Instead, he decides to develop his light square bishop on d3 so that he can bring his another rook into the game. And guys, now I just want you all to pause the video and just think that what will you play as of white. Okay, so first of all, look at this position carefully. Here black is now attacking this rook, but what's the problem? I mean, what will happen if white simply goes back to a1? I mean, it looks logical, but the problem with that move is now black is going to simply castle, and you can see now there is no more attack. So that's why after knight to e7, in this position here Carlsen sacrificed his rook by bishop to a3. And let's suppose if black captured this rook by bishop takes a7, that would be a huge blunder. Because now the diagonal of this dark square bishop is opened, so white can take advantage of it by simply rook takes e7 check, and after this king moves, knight takes a7, and you can see now this is losing for black. So that's why after bishop to a3, here black decides to capture this dark square bishop, and now white can recapture this either with the rook or with the knight. But recapturing with the rook might be the better option, which is actually happened in the game, because we can easily place this rook again back to this a7 square very easily, whereas you know this knight on corners are very bad. And basically black didn't capture on g2 because this would open the g file where white can easily place this rook. Okay, so now rook to b1, and you can see in the next move white is going to capture this bishop so that he can capture on b7. So to stop this, he defends the b7 pawn, and now black is threatening to capture this pawn. So that's why Carlsen simply blocks this diagonal by f3, and here black's made a mistake by knight to d5. He leaves the defense of this bishop, and now Carlsen simply captured on c6. And guys, at this moment, something absolutely crazy happens in the game. Here, Inarkiev plays an illegal move, which is knight to e3 check. Now, technically, Carlsen have won the game by just instantly claiming that this is an illegal move. But instead of stopping the clock, Carlsen instinctively moves his king out from danger and plays king to d3. And now things get really messy. Inarkiev suddenly stops the clock and claims victory, saying that Carlsen himself made an illegal move. The initial arbiter actually gives the win to Inarkiev. Unbelievable scenes. But Carlsen doesn't panic. He immediately informs the chief arbiter, who reviews the situation and overrules the first decision. The chief arbiter tells Inarkiev that the game must continue from the position after king to d3. And here comes the twist. Inarkiev refuses to play. Because of that refusal, Carlsen is awarded the win. Inarkiev later appeals this decision, but the appeal board just rejects this claim, and Carlsen victory stand. Like this video, and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.